evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson. Tonight, we want to take the next hour and go inside the issues, looking beyond for a moment just the day's breaking news. There's a lot of it. But instead, assess some of the bigger issues that are coming to define our life in this country. We're going to open tonight with another look at what has been this year's biggest story, immigration. Without much real public debate or even discussion, the elite left has reached a conclusion on the question, and it's that America needs more immigration. Much more immigration without limit. And we shouldn't worry about whether the people coming here have skills that we need, whether they're educated, whether they can speak English even, or even whether they're violent criminals. In fact, we shouldn't even try to accurately count how many are coming here or how many live within our borders. Do you disagree with that? Well, then, in the words of one MSNBC commentator, you're pure evil. Watch.
Donald Trump, without a doubt, is pure evil. No other country in the Americas has walls. No other country in the world separates children from their parents.
Pure evil. The thing about pure evil is you can't reason with it. You can't negotiate with pure evil or reach some kind of compromise with pure evil. Pure evil can only be destroyed by force. Given that, it's not surprising that the left is now mobilizing to harass, fire, and if necessary, physically attack anyone who disagrees with them on immigration, because the other side is, again, pure evil. For example, after chasing DHS Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen out of a restaurant earlier this week in downtown Washington, activists now showed up at her home. But zoom out for a moment. Why exactly does America need more immigration? Everybody says it does, but do we really? Does more immigration help ordinary Americans? Does it improve the country? Or does it just enrich an elite class, the policymaking class, at the expense of everyone else? Very few people are asking that question, but one who is Michael Anton. He just wrote a piece in the Washington Post asking, why do we need more people in this country anyway? We thought that was a good question. So we're kicking off tonight's special with Michael Anton. Michael, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Tucker. I'm very glad to be here.
Well, I was grateful that you pulled back a little bit and asked the macro question that undergirds all of this. Do we really need a flow of more than 1 million new people into America every year? What was your conclusion?
Well, my conclusion is let's look at the answers that people give for why and examine them, and they don't really bear close examination. So reason number one tends to be we need them we need workers. We have all these jobs, we need workers. And that sounds kind of plausible when we have a low unemployment rate for the first time in a long time. But remember, that low unemployment rate is an achievement of the Trump economy coming after 20 years of wage stagnation and even wage declines for working and middle-class Americans. So I remember the 90s when the Clinton administration were seeking tight labor markets, and their argument was, if we have tight labor markets, wages are going to go up for the core Democratic constituencies, working people. Democrats don't care about that anymore because they're not the party of labor anymore. They're the party of oligarchs, essentially, and they like more immigrants because they want to push wages down. So the jobs argument doesn't really hold up. Another argument is people will say, well, we need more immigrants because of declining birth rates and in particular to fix Social Security or our entitlements. That doesn't really hold up because by that logic, you'd have to say, you know, workers will always have to outnumber retirees, which means population growth forever, which means what's the upper limit on the U.S. population? We're now at over 300 million, 320, 330 million. 500 million, a billion? They don't want to answer that question. They just want to say, no, we have to keep doing what we're doing. No examination possible. It's really kind of crazy, honestly, that we can't have this debate.
Let me pause you there. So when people say that we need more immigrants to float our social safety net, what they're really saying is our social safety net is a Ponzi scheme, and that the people at the end of it are going to get shafted, right? It's not sustainable without an endless flow of poor people.
In 1967, a Nobel Prize-winning economist who had not yet won the Nobel Prize but would later explicitly called Social Security a Ponzi scheme, and he meant it as a compliment because his assumption, this is the mid-60s with a booming economy and a growing population, he said the greatest Ponzi scheme ever devised is a growing country. So the assumption is the country's just going to grow forever. That includes population. I don't know about you, but I find a lot of parts of the country are pretty crowded as it is. Traffic's really bad. Housing prices are very high. Why do we want to make it more crowded, housing prices more expensive, school systems more stressed? I never hear a very good or convincing answer to that.
Well, I don't hear the argument actually at all. I don't hear an argument about immigration. What I hear, and you pointed this out, I thought, really well in your piece, I hear not a policy debate, but a religious argument. If you're for the side that I'm taking, you're a good person. If you're against it, you're a bad person, or pure evil, as they say on MSNBC.
Right. I think people, they try to make the point that America has been welcoming in the past. Previous waves of immigration have served America well, and there's a lot of truth to that. There was a time when America made humongous acquisitions of land, and our political leaders in the past thought that they needed more people to help go settle and farm that land. That made sense. There was a time during the Industrial Revolution when factories were booming and business was expanding at a rate that exceeded the ability of the present population to fill those jobs.
Yes.
And we welcomed a lot of immigrants in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. There's a rationale for that at those times. What's the rationale now? Those two filling up the land, that doesn't hold anymore.
You're right.
The frontier was declared closed by the federal government in the late 1800s. So, I mean, where do we...
I think you're asking the most basic question that nobody asks, and I'm really glad that you did. And I hope that your piece today sets off a national conversation on the subject. Michael Anton, thank you for joining us.
Thanks a lot.
Well, instead of encouraging that conversation, which is important, I think, Democratic politicians are now pushing rhetoric that is getting more extreme by the day. New York gubernatorial candidate Cynthia Nixon recently declared, for example, that ICE is a terrorist organization. Watch this.
ICE has strayed so far from its mission. It's supposed to be here to keep Americans safe, but what it's turned into is frankly a terrorist organization of its own.
Giovanni Williams is a New York City councilman. He's running for lieutenant governor of New York State and could share a ticket potentially with Cynthia Nixon. He joins us tonight for our special. Mr. Williams, thanks a lot for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
So let's start with being honest about one thing that I think Michael Anton is right about. We're, most of the time when we talk about immigration, having a religious debate about who's a good person, who's a bad person. So if we could, for the next 4 minutes, let's keep this to policy.
Sure.
Tell me how bringing more immigrants into your neighborhood, I think it's East Flatbush in New York, helps the people who already live there. Immigrants and citizens, the people who are already there, how are they helped by it?
Well, I'm very proud to be the son of immigrants, and I'm very proud that the majority of my constituents are either immigrants or their parents are immigrants. I think that's the wrong question. The question many of us are asking is, why do we have to use overwhelming force, resources, and draconian measures to rip up families for an issue that at best is akin to graffiti or a parking ticket? That's the question that we're asking.
Well, but I'm not sure that it is, and that's why and I think you're asking a fair question, but let's get to the deeper question, which is, why is our current immigration system good for the people who already live here? So if we decide, for example, that mass immigration and mass illegal immigration hurts Americans, then it's worth being pretty tough, I would say, on the border. So why don't you explain to me why the people of East Flatbush, who are dealing with overcrowded schools, who are dealing with public transportation that's falling apart, that are dealing with rising rents that are making them move, how do they benefit from more immigrants living there?
Well, again, I actually still believe that immigrants to this country have and still do benefit this country. The reason I'm trying to flip back is because even if I conceded to your argument, let's pretend that somehow it's harmful. How harmful is it? Is it worth spending?
Well, I'm not actually making an argument.
Sure.
I'm asking you a question, which is the most simple and most basic, the foundational question. How does this help Americans, our people, and you don't have an answer to it?
No, I think,
and I find that really interesting.
No,
don't
but
you?
I think that's that is not the foundational question. So we disagree on what the foundational question is. And so if I'm conceding,
Really?
if for the sake of your argument there is some harm, it is akin to writing graffiti on the wall or akin to getting a parking ticket. And so the question
But you're not proving that. You're just stating it.
No,
so,
no,
for
but I'm
example,
saying,
housing prices are a huge problem. And you're a liberal, I'm a conservative.
Sure.
But we can agree that
Yeah.
housing prices in New York are hurting people. Your people are being hurt by housing prices going up.
The question is,
why does an influx of immigrants make prices go down? No, it makes them go up.
The question is,
do you know that?
In my state, 1% of the population makes 45% more than the bottom 99%. That's not immigrants. We have more millionaires and billionaires that came out of the recession than before. That's not immigrants. Black people came into the recession with the least amount of wealth, and they lost the most. Those aren't immigrants.
That's true.
We're gonna.
No, but you're absolutely right, and I actually think that's a huge problem. But let me ask you this: who supports mass immigration more, poor Black Americans or rich people on the Upper East Side of New York? I know the answer. Let me blow your mind and tell you the rich people support it more because they get cheap housekeepers out of it. And the people in your district who were born in this country see it as a threat to them because it is a threat to them.
No, but
and you're not representing them if you don't recognize
generally speaking, the people who support the ripping up of the families and the child detention centers are doing it because they're saying their life is made worse. But who's making their life worse is not immigrants. And so the 33,000 Americans who are going to be shot and killed this year are not immigrants. They are Americans. And so what my question is, why are we spending more on ICE than any other federal enforcement agency combined to do this?
Okay, but we're arguing apples and oranges.
Sure.
I'm just kidding. We're almost out of time, but really quick, can you name a specific way that flooding East Flatbush with immigrants, poor immigrants, will make the lives of your people, the people who live in your neighborhood, better, the Americans?
Listen,
how will it improve their lives?
I'm running for lieutenant governor. The current lieutenant governor has said that she would turn people over to ICE. And so she kind of leans toward you when it comes to immigration. But my fundamental point here is that we are spending overwhelming force, draconian money on something that is akin to graffiti.
Right, no, I get it.
But it's important.
You don't like it, but you can't tell me how bringing these people in helps Americans because we both know it doesn't matter.
I always congratulate you on your conflation of issues. It's great. You shouldn't stop. But it's just
I'm not
it's just not the
anything.
issue at hand.
I'm asking the basic question.
Me
We're out
too.
of time, unfortunately.
Thanks for having me.
Councilman Williams, thank you. Brandon Judd is the president of the National Border Patrol Council, and he joins us tonight. Mr. Judd, thank you for coming on. So first, I've got to ask you how, at the end of this week, when you and people like you have been compared to Nazis on CNN and MSNBC all week, what's your reaction to that? How does that make you feel? How does it make the guys you work with feel? What's morale like after a week like this?
Well, first off, I'm absolutely disgusted that somebody would compare ICE agents, Border Patrol agents, CBP officers to Nazis who actually murdered people. What we're doing is we're enforcing the law in a very humane way. We're doing it the way Congress asked us to do it, and we're doing it in an effort to protect this country and to protect those citizens in the United States. Look, I've met with the Angel Moms. I'm grateful that President Trump met with the Angel Moms today, and to hear their stories and to find out how horrible that they feel because they're really ripped apart is pathetic. To think that people in our own country would disparage their law enforcement officers and agents that are only trying to help them.
So you're seeing Democrats running for office in this fall's midterm elections. We interviewed one of them last night, running on abolishing ICE because they say the agency is immoral. How do you respond to that?
Notice how they don't use facts. You know, your last guest, he said that ICE is the highest funded law enforcement organization in the federal government. That's absolutely false. ICE is actually a very small organization. The United States Border Patrol is much larger than ICE. CBP is much larger than ICE. But what they do is they don't use facts. They use rhetoric, and they're trying to scare people. And the facts, when we let all of the dust settle, when we actually find out what the facts are, people come back and say, wow, I was duped. After this week is over, after all of this outcry of what's going on, once this week is over and everything, the waters are less muddy and people take a look back and see what was really happening, they're going to say, I was duped, and they're going to come right back to the Republicans, and thank goodness they're going to.
Very quickly, since the left is now calling for the abolition of ICE, what do you think would happen if ICE were eliminated?
If ICE were eliminated, we would never be able to go after the criminal aliens that are currently here in the United States. We're talking about rapists. We're talking about murderers. We're talking about people that commit DUI and then kill people, manslaughter, homicide, negligent homicide. We're talking about all kinds of different crimes. And without ICE, we would not be able to go after these individuals, and we would have a less safe country. We just can't have it.
It's terrifying. Brandon Judd, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, if you've been watching it all this week, you know that the left's rhetoric on immigration is reaching places that are dangerous. And we wonder, where is this headed? We think you know where it's headed, but we'll show you examples of where it's headed Next, as tonight's special edition of Tucker Carlson Tonight, Inside the Issues continues.
This program.
Welcome back to tonight's special edition, Inside the Issues. If you've been paying attention, then you well know the left's rhetoric on immigration is becoming more militant by the day. On MSNBC this morning, host Stephanie Ruhle warned that if the administration doesn't revise its immigration policies, that immigrant children will eventually grow up to punish us in some way with their vengeance. Watch this.
Help us understand what this kind of damage does to these young people. I worry that you're creating Terminator-like characters that will seek vengeance.
Let them in or they will kill you. Excellent argument. Also on MSNBC, commentator Donnie Deutsch declared that every Trump voter, every single one of them, all 63 million, is a Nazi. Watch.
We can no longer say Trump's the bad guy. If you vote for Trump, you're the bad guy. If you vote for Trump, you are ripping children from parents' arms. If you vote for Trump, then you, the voter, you, not Donald Trump, are standing at the border like Nazis, going, you here, you here.
So where's this going? You know exactly where it's going. If you really believed Nazis were taking over your country, what wouldn't you do to them? You would fight them. You'd have a moral obligation to. Anyone who tells you your political opponents in this country, American citizens, are Nazis, is pushing us toward violence, obviously. We asked MSNBC today if they supported all of this, and why are they allowing this on their air? They didn't respond to us. Dan Bongino is a former NYPD officer and Secret Service agent, and he joins us tonight. Look, Dan, the left is always conflating words with violence and saying, you said something that makes me feel unsafe, and I hate that. And I think people ought to be able to say exactly what they think. But when you start saying that people who disagree with you aren't just wrong or stupid or even immoral, but they're Nazis, what are you really saying?
Well, Tucker, I'd like to attribute Donnie Deutsch's comments to average run-of-the-mill stupidity, but it's not, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I wish it were. This is a tactic by the left. Here's how this works, Tucker. It's an effort to dehumanize people. In other words,
yes.
You know, you have on your show, I just watched, you have liberals all the time. I'm sure I've met you personally. You don't think they're Nazis. You think they just have really bad ideas. We think liberals
exactly
are people with bad ideas. Yeah, liberals, Tucker, think we are bad people with ideas. There's a difference, and there's a tactical difference. The tactical difference is this. When you lose on the facts and you lose on the data and you can't win a rhetorical argument using reason, what you do is you shut the argument down in advance by getting people to believe that the person you're arguing against is something less than human. He's not worthy of an opinion. He's to be dehumanized. He is a bad person with an idea, not a person with a bad idea. They do this on purpose, Tucker. This is not a mistake what they're doing. I wish it were.
Well, you know what people who are not people don't have? Rights. So the DHS secretary was informed that she does not have a right to go out in public, a right to have dinner in a restaurant in downtown D.C. without being threatened. Now she doesn't have a right to sit at home with her family. Her home was surrounded by screaming protesters. Where are the adults on the left who are willing to get out there and say, you know what, this is too far. You've crossed a line here. You're moving toward violence, which is exactly what they're doing. Where are the adults in the Democratic Party to say that?
Tucker, they're gone. There are other big R God-given rights that you don't have as a conservative either. You can't assemble on a college campus without being attacked in many places. You don't have the right to privacy anymore, which, by the way, wasn't even in the Constitution. The left invented it, then uninvented it in Spygate. You don't have the right to defend yourself with the left anymore. Tucker, here's what worries me about this, though. There's an emergency brake on conservatives and liberals. I tell people all the time, be wary. These people aren't kidding in some of their calls for violence. They're not joking.
That's exactly right. What you just said is the essence of it. When you think you're God, there's no limit on what you can do. And you're exactly right. Dan Bongino, that was wise. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Well, the thought police on the left may be obsessed with immigration. That does not mean, however, that they are letting up elsewhere. Across the country, gay people are being targeted for eating chicken sandwiches at Chick-fil-A. Huh? True story. Our special continues with that next. Welcome back to tonight's Inside the Issues special. Chick-fil-A makes a tasty sandwich. It also treats its workers well, by all accounts. But some of its owners are Christians, so naturally the left is targeting the company for destruction, in part by shaming anyone who is gay who dares eat there. Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey was recently caught eating at Chick-fil-A in public and had to issue an apology for that because the country's gone crazy. A recent piece in HuffPo says this, quote, "If you really love LGBTQ people, you can't keep eating Chick-fil-A," because they want to control now what you eat. Ironically, the left is forcing gay Chick-fil-A lovers back into the culinary closet. Are we for that? Chadwick Moore is a journalist in New York. He is not for it. He joins us tonight. Chadwick Moore, so HuffPo is telling gay people where they're allowed to eat now?
Yeah, this seems to be true. You know, it's interesting. I don't know if you've looked around during the month of June recently, but every international corporation you can think of, every bank, every airline, every consumer product, every retail store is hosed down in rainbow flags. They've all changed their avatars on social media to rainbow colors. I took an Uber the other morning, and the little line that shows me where my driver was going, the route, had turned into a rainbow path. They are the status quo. The LGBT rights movement is the establishment. It is the man. And they are so desperate for enemies. They're so desperate for villains. The best thing they can come up with is something the CEO of a fast food restaurant said 6 years ago. And now it's suddenly hashtag never forget that time the chicken empire, the chicken kingpin, said something that offended the pearl-clutching lefty gays. It's the truth of the matter is, and we always come around to this, is there are actual villains against gay people in this world. You don't really find them in the United States, but you do find them in places where the religion of peace tends to dominate. But you hear nothing about that. You hear nothing about companies like when Google recently capitulated to the government of Indonesia to remove over 70 apps, gay-themed apps from the Play Store there, because the government in Indonesia is cracking down on gay people. They, of course, publicly cane gay men. They take transgender women, they shave their heads, they put them in men's clothing, they parade them around town. Where is Noah Michelson at the Huffington Post calling on a boycott of Google? Why do they always
Google?
ignore
So I didn't even know that. So Google did that? But I thought, Google is like the most progressive corporation in the world. They're very good people. I think they've told us that, what good people they are. I can't believe that could be true. It is?
Well, progressiveness sells very well in the United States. It does not sell very well in Muslim nations like Indonesia. It's a matter of what goes with the business. Yes, they removed around 70 gay apps from the Play Store there.
That's unbelievable. So I notice, you're gay. I noticed that you're still eating Chick-fil-A. Is that a Chick-fil-A cup in your hand?
It's delicious. It's such good food. Yes, I am. And I'm wondering who. I wonder who they could be targeting with this boycott, because I'm sure that the staff at Huffington Post is not eating fast food. I'm sure the coastal elite Marxists are pretty much having their lunch on $30 vegan sandwiches, and I don't think many gay people, especially during swimsuit season, are eating much fast food. It's such a desperate ploy to come up with a villain, and it just proves to show that they have nothing anymore. They have no one left to hate. They have to drum up these imaginary villains. If George Orwell knew that the 2 minutes of hate would turn into gay people screaming at sandwiches, I don't know if he'd be rolling over in his grave or laughing, but that seems to be the place we come to today.
When you find yourself telling people where they're allowed to eat, you know you've taken a wrong turn. Chadwick Moore, brave man. Great to see you tonight.
Thanks. You too, Tucker.
Well, recently, Amazon.com, that's the massive retailer owned by progressive activist Jeff Bezos, that will soon control every facet of your life, booted the non-profit Alliance Defending Freedom from its Amazon Smile charitable donation platform. Why did it do that? Well, of course, it was a political decision, but Amazon hid behind the Southern Poverty Law Center, which is a fake civil rights group that has classified ADF as a hate group, when itself is a hate group. Kristen Wagoner is a senior vice president at Alliance Defending Freedom, and we recently spoke to her about what happened. So give us a quick recap of what happened. You participated in this program. What did you get out of it, and why were you booted off?
Well, the Amazon Smile program is a program that allows customers to have a portion of the proceeds of what they buy through Amazon to be given back to charitable organizations like Alliance Defending Freedom. We participated in that program for a number of years, and all of a sudden, one of our donors said, hey, I was trying to buy something on Amazon, and they're saying you're ineligible, and booted out of this program now.
So you got no warning from Amazon that you're being thrown off?
Absolutely not. We got no warning at all. And it's really appalling to think that they would hide behind the Southern Poverty Law Center, which basically exists to banish credible, well-respected faith-based organizations with whom they disagree.
Right, and slander you as haters, which you are not. What did Amazon say? Did it explain that you were a hate group in the eyes of the SPLC?
Amazon said that it allows Southern Poverty Law Center to make the determination of who can participate in that program. And all the while, it's allowing the SPLC itself to participate in the program and hunt down those that don't agree with its leftist ideology.
That's shocking. And the SPLC, of course, is a scam. It's a money-making operation run by charlatans that, in the process of ripping off the public, slanders people as haters. Did you appeal in any way?
We have. We've asked immediately. We asked Amazon to reconsider. We tried to appeal to its sense of civility, fairness, tolerance, and we're hoping to meet with them and that they'll rescind their decision. There are common sense solutions available, and it's baffling as to why Amazon has chosen this route.
Did they say point blank, the Southern Poverty Law Center doesn't like you, so that's it? And why would Amazon, by some measures the biggest company in the world, turn over decision-making powers to the SPLC?
Those are all good questions, and questions that we have asked and will continue to ask. What we know is that decisions like that undermine our pluralistic society, and frankly, we are a well-respected Supreme Court advocacy group. To punish us is actually to marginalize all those Americans that also want to have the right of free speech and free exercise of religion. We stand for everyone, even those with whom we disagree, and SPLC does not.
So there are also other implications. I mean, we're in a very intense environment now where people are doing crazy things. There's some risk associated with being compared to a Nazi, which is what they're doing to you. Are you worried?
Well, absolutely we're worried. I mean, a building that we were in with the Family Research Council in 2012 was attacked by a would-be mass murderer who shot the security guard, and he said he was incited by SPLC. So there's no question that we're worried about this designation. And again, we're calling on Amazon to change its position and distance itself from this kind of hateful, inciting rhetoric.
Yeah, the irony is they're the haters, of course. Kristen, thank you for that explanation. I appreciate it. Good luck.
Thank you.
Most in Congress have been content to ignore the rising threat of China, but not every lawmaker is out to lunch on the question. Our Inside the Issues special continues next with Senator Marco Rubio, who's been paying close attention. Stay tuned. Welcome back to our Inside the Issues special hour tonight. Much of Congress prefers to ignore the threat from China. They focus their attention instead on Russia, a country with an economy the size basically of Texas that can't build a working escalator. Meanwhile, China is rapidly gaining on us, economically, technologically, militarily. One of China's chief means of catching up and surpassing the United States is by stealing American intellectual property. The scale of that theft is awe-inspiring. Some estimate it is worth hundreds of billions of dollars a year. Florida Senator Marco Rubio says it is time to stop this, and it's time to start with trade restrictions on China in retaliation for it. We spoke to Senator Rubio recently about that. Here's how it went. Give us a quick overview of the scale of the theft, and then tell us your solution.
It's so massive. It's almost like a game of whack-a-mole trying to keep up with it. They use all kinds of tools, just straight out theft, or companies doing business in China. You're required to partner with a Chinese company, and then they make you give them the technology, and once they figure out how to do it themselves, because they took it from you, they kick you out. They don't need you anymore. They come to the U.S., they embed students in our universities for purposes of stealing information and bringing it back, or they just come out and hire American researchers, pay them 4 times as much to take the research that they're doing oftentimes paid, by the American taxpayer at the ground level to start it and take it over there to them. So it's just, I could go on and on for hours, but it is a constant and massive, unprecedented effort to transfer the intellectual wealth of this country to surpass us.
It's not clear to me why so few in the Congress, in the Senate where you serve, seem even aware of this, and even fewer are willing to do anything about it. Why is that?
Well, there's a couple things here. The first is you've got these big American corporations who are doing business over there, and they see it as a place where they can sell things to 1.4 billion people. So for them, as long as they can keep making money over there, they're not that concerned about the long term. They want good quarterly returns. By the time this stuff matters, most of those CEOs will be gone. They'll be retired. Part of it is that. Part of it is it's just hard to believe. It's hard to believe that this is happening. People think it's exaggerated. Just in the last year, have we started to see more and more people up here begin to take it seriously? But it's almost too late. But we still, I believe, have time to kind of get this right.
So how would you respond?
Well, we've offered a bill that does a couple things. First of all, it would prohibit the transfer of any technologies, whether it's through a partnership over there or selling it to them from here, of any of the key technologies that China is targeting under a thing called Made in China 2025. It's basically their blueprint to dominate the world of artificial intelligence, biomedicine, and the like. We shouldn't be transferring any technology. That's at the core of this fight with ZTE, by the way. It's a small company compared to Huawei. Huawei is an even bigger problem, which is their big telecom, and we need to be. So that's the primary thing we would do, is just say you cannot sell or transfer any technology with them or joint partner with them and transfer technology. That would be the first step, because a lot of this stuff right now is being willingly given over to them, and well, under coercion, obviously, but it's just happening in the open.
That seems like a wise first step. Senator, Godspeed. We're rooting for you on that. Thank you very much.
Thanks for paying attention to this. Thank you.
Suicide rates for young people in this country are rising very fast, and no one's exactly sure why. Most people aren't paying any attention at all. Could it be that the rise of smartphones is one major factor? We'll go inside that question as our special tonight continues.
You're turning onto the street when you...
Welcome back to our special broadcast of Inside the Issues for the Hour. The campaign to legalize marijuana continues to gain momentum, not just in this country, but around the world. Canada just legalized it. President Trump has signaled his willingness to end the federal ban on marijuana. Many people think that's great. Former Democratic Congressman Patrick Kennedy feels uneasy about it. He just wrote a piece in the Wall Street Journal warning that legalizing marijuana could be bad for kids. Well, it would also set back, he says, the cause of social justice. We spoke to him earlier about this. So I'm interested to hear your perspective on this. You're one of the only people, certainly one of the only Democrats, to say anything like this out loud. So I'd like to know what your reasoning is.
Well, we've been through the experience of this current opioid crisis, and everybody's pointing back to where Purdue Pharma marketed this very addictive OxyContin, and what was ending up happening is that public health got put to the sidelines while profits for Purdue Pharma ruled public health. It took over any debate as to the real impact of this drug overall on our nation. And then we go back a generation to the tobacco industry settlement, and how we had to learn for a long time as to the fact that there was an addictive substance, nicotine, in tobacco that was driving commercial marketing of cigarettes. And so with all of that knowledge, why would we be surprised that if we have a new commercial push to push a product out called marijuana, that there wouldn't be a very deleterious impact on our public health, especially given the fact that we know with legalization really it means commercialization, which really means
But wait a second, Congressman. We know that the people who run the marijuana companies are very cool, progressive people. And they're not in this for the money. They're in it because they want to make the world a better place. So why don't you trust them?
Well, that's I think the thing that we have to ask of ourselves. Are the billions of dollars now going into investing into cannabis and in the many products that are being produced? I might add, elixirs, which are basically the old Fanta grape aids and orange aids that we grew up with. Those are now being infused with marijuana-infused THC. Beyond just the brownies, the marijuana industry is now infusing gummy bears. They're infusing things like Pop-Tarts. Other food edibles is what they're known. In other words, this is a really slick, very smart marketing effort. If you have money on the line behind the marijuana industry, you're standing to gain a lot of money in the years ahead. And yet, who's going to be the biggest one to pay the for all of this? It's going to be the public health that pays the cost of this. It's going to be young people who are going to think that this is an easy alternative for me to deal with my stress and anxiety, because now I've got all of these choices. I can drink it, I can smoke it, I can eat it, whatever will help me feel less anxious.
Yeah.
And frankly, Tucker, you know, amidst this mental health and addiction crisis, it's shocking that we're not asking a more fundamental question. What are we doing to help our young people manage their stress, cope with their problems, navigate their anxieties? That should be the challenge on our country right now. And yet, I think we're selling our young people down the river by allowing a new predatory business that feeds off of addiction, that makes money off of getting people hooked. I think that's bad for the public health of this country.
I agree with you 100%. And by the way, I should note for our viewers who don't know that you personally overcame addiction to drugs and alcohol without the use of more drugs and alcohol, and you're a better man as a result of that. So congratulations to you, and thank you for your perspective on that.
I appreciate having me.
Teen suicide rates in this country have risen dramatically over the last 10 years. One cause of that rise could be the proliferation of smartphones. Gene Twenge is a professor of psychology at San Diego State University and the author of the book iGen, Why Today's Superconnected Kids Are Growing Up Less Happy. She had this to say about that question. Just for the overview here, this seems like a crisis. How much research, academic research, is being done into the causes of this?
Yeah, so first, we do have a lot of academic research documenting the severity of this trend, not just in suicide, but in self-harm behaviors like cutting, and in depression, and in anxiety. All of them have just skyrocketed since 2010 or 2011, especially among teens and young adults. So that time sequence lines up almost perfectly with the rise of the smartphone and teens spending a lot more time looking at their phones and less time hanging out with their friends face to face.
But it doesn't, I mean, on some level, it's counterintuitive because this technology was sold to us on the premise it would bring people together. You could instantaneously communicate with everyone in your world, and yet the effect has been, you're saying, to make us more isolated? How does that work?
Yeah, so that's the interesting thing. And if used for a limited amount of time, say an hour or so a day, social media and texting and phones in general can connect us to each other. But what you're getting, especially with a lot of teens and many adults too, is they're spending almost all of their leisure time on phones and tablets and playing games. And that crowds out time for things that are much more beneficial for mental health, not just getting together with each other face to face, but also things like sleep. And getting enough sleep is really, really important for mental health. You don't get enough sleep, it's a huge risk factor for depression and thinking about suicide.
So if there is, and there seems to be growing evidence that this technology is responsible for kids killing themselves, tell me how the people who are growing rich from selling this technology are responding to that.
Well, fortunately, just in the last few months, there has been some good news on that front with smartphone manufacturers. So both Google and Apple have rolled out software that allows you to see how much time you're actually spending on the phone. Apple's new parental controls allow parents to shut down a teen's phone at night so they can get a good night's sleep, as well as restrict the amount of time they they spend on certain apps. So it really allows a nice compromise position for parents who can say, all right, kiddo, you can use Snapchat, but you got 30 minutes a day and that's it. So use it well.
The parents just have to avail themselves of that, and I hope they will, because it looks like it's really important. Doctor, thank you a lot. Thanks very much for coming on tonight and explaining that. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
After tonight's special, Fox will commemorate the life of Charles Krauthammer, but first, there's something we'd like to say about Charles, and we'll tell you when we come back.